A good break? Good lunch? Very good. Found some of the Midtown cuisine. Well, folks are going to be filtering back. I know some people are engaged in very powerful discussions based on our panels this morning. But we'll go, in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started. I have some announcements to make. One is having to do with something, those of you that were lucky enough to get a bag on the way in, if you reach into your bag, you will find a pen. And this is a commemorative pen commemorating this event. We have a number of anniversaries we're very proud of happening right now at the University of Florida. One is we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the creation of the African American Studies program. Yes. You've had a chance to talk to a lot of colleagues. Professor Lauren Perlman, who's in faculty, who's right there, Dr. Perlman, and of course Sharon Austin spoke earlier. African American Studies at UF is an incredible, incredible program. And when I go across the country and talk to colleagues at other African American Studies programs or departments, and I tell them how many UF undergraduates major or minor in African American Studies, they cannot believe it. I tell them we have over 100 majors per year, and that's been true, Dr. Perlman, for how long? Several years, over 100 per year. And it's a testament to the hunger of our students to learn, the energy and passion of the faculty, people like Dr. Patricia Hilliard-Nunn, Zahara Simmons, Lauren Perlman, people who have been in the program for many, many years. This pen also commemorates the 50th anniversary of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. And now we celebrated our 50th a few years ago, but my theory is kind of like a wedding anniversary. You can just keep on celebrating, right? Should we have a chocolate shake tonight? Yeah, it was our anniversary last week. Let's take advantage of it, right? But if you take that pen out, take the plastic cap off the top of the pen, and you press this button, and you see a light. Now, it may not mean much to you right now, but if you're in a dark room and at night, this will light up almost the entire room. Albert knows it, right? Yes, it's really cool. So it's one of the things we have for you in the bag. The other thing we have, and I'm going to ask Deborah Hendricks, and I'm going to start to acknowledge people throughout the course of the next 3 days, but one of the people that we really need to acknowledge, this morning we talked a lot about doing the oral histories, processing them, making them accessible. Okay, so I'm a historian, I love to read books, I love to do interviews and do field work, but I was trained in the analog era. That means I was trained when we used cassettes. So when I use metaphors like make sure to tape your interview, my students look at me and they're like, what? Tape what? Like with Scotch tape, right? We have the world's best digital humanities production coordinator in the world, I believe, teaching right here at the University of Florida in the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. She's the woman behind the camera. And those of you who have ever called into the oral history program who need an interview, who need someone to find an interview that was done back in 1977 by Dr. Proctor, need someone to produce something, faculty, staff are constantly, students, senior thesis projects at the 11th hour, they need someone to help them produce. Who do they go to? Deborah Hendricks. I want to acknowledge Deborah right now. I'm going to ask Deborah in just a couple of minutes to talk about another really cool thing we have here, the flash drives. She'll get to that. I also want to mention that tonight we have a powerful, powerful experience in store for you, a keynote address given by Professor Curtis Austin, who I saw earlier today, who I think Curtis may not be back from lunch yet. Is he back yet? He's going to give a talk titled The Greatest Threat, the Black Panther Party and Revolution in America. And then my dear colleague and friend, Professor Derek White from Dartmouth College, is going to give a comment on that talk, and he's right there. Raise your hand, Derek. Thank you. So that's going to be a wonderful event, and there's a couple ways to view that. Now, if you were able to RSVP and your name is on that RSVP list, we have you on the list. Please arrive as early as you can. And I will have the list. I'll be at the door. You can talk to me directly about that. For those who want a kind of more relaxed, kind of laid-back environment, we also have a live stream viewing area in Pugh Hall. It's a beautiful building. It's the building that the oral history program is in. And you can also view the keynote and the comment at Pugh Hall. And we'll also have food and refreshments for you there as well. So either place is really a fun place to view. But I guess my main takeaway is try to get to the Harn as early as possible, even if you have RSVP, because we want to make sure that we can accommodate everyone. If there is an overflow and the fire marshal happens to be there, and that's out of our control, we can do a lot of things in the oral history program, but we can't go up against a fire marshal, right? We will have a shuttle running back from the Harn to Pugh Hall at 5:30 to make sure that everyone is able to watch the keynote. So I just want to let you know about that. Another late addition to the program, I got a call from his office administrator yesterday afternoon. Tomorrow morning, right before the 9 a.m. session, we're going to hear some words of welcome and inspiration by the Honorable Clovis Watson, state representative from District 20. He sends us our greetings today, but he's going to be in person live tomorrow morning to join us. So that's going to be a real treat. Right now, I would like to call up Deborah Hendricks, and Deborah is going to get the movie started, but just by way of a few words of introduction, Gator Tales was a play produced about the struggles, the aspirations, the stories of the first generations of African American students at the University of Florida. And President Fox this morning mentioned how that story, kind of like Joel Buchanan's story at Gainesville High School, initially it was this, wow, this is so cool, so great about integration. But then people began thinking, what does that term mean? What's the difference between integration and community? Integration and real inclusion. Integration and welcoming. And realizing when we were doing these interviews with the first generation of African American students at UF, many of them went through hell in this institution. Many of them were abused, mistreated, not only not made to feel welcome, but in fact openly excluded and invited to leave. And so those interviews are a powerful part of the Joel Buchanan archive. The public program that really started off the African American History Project, we talked about it this morning also, and that was Black History, Florida Black History in the age of Barack Obama. Where do we go from here? One of the people that anchored that panel is here with us this morning, and I want to acknowledge both her and her husband, and of course I'm talking about Mrs. Evelyn Mickle and Judge Stephen Mickle. Please join me in acknowledging them. Mrs. Mickle's story was so powerful in that panel, and I remember President Machen sitting in the front row. I remember so many people actually crying when you told your story. And I want to thank you for sharing that story, because when I think about the Joel Buchanan archive and what we're able to do in opening it tomorrow, Mrs. Mickle, you were the catalyst. So I want to thank you right here and right now. I remember when you told your story in the front row, right? You're sitting right there. And everyone sat up in attention, okay? It was so powerful, so thank you for that. When we watch the play in a few minutes, the recorded version, you'll see Mrs. Mickle's story, Mr. Albert White's story, Mr. Bernard Hicks's story. After the film, we're going to ask the three of them if Mr. Hicks can make it. Mr. Hicks has elder care today, so he apologizes in advance. He may not be able to make it. But we'll definitely hear from Mr. White and Mrs. Mickle, their responses to watching their oral histories being performed on the stage. And I mentioned this morning that performance has become really one of the powerful ways to get the word out about oral history. It's different than listening to the actual person. You watch an actor or performer perform that narrative and perform the story. So without further delay, I will turn it over to Deborah Hendricks. And again, this is about a 50-minute clip, and then we'll have the response panel afterwards. And Deborah, did you want to say something about the flash drives?
Yeah. Well, sure. I don't know if you noticed on like page 2 of the program. Is it on there, Paul?
Oh, page 3.
Page 3, sorry. There's a little icon some of the people that have badges are wearing, and they have USBs that they'll give out. And what those are 8 gigabytes worth of oral histories, and they're not all the same. And one of them is gator tails. I can't tell you which one. There's 8 different kinds, so it's kind of the luck of the draw. And these are I think the most powerful stories that we have in oral history. So I hope you can get one and find someone that has a badge that has the little icon.
I don't have one.
No, you didn't have one. I don't know. We figured you'd be busy. Okay.
Welcome to the Nadine McGuire Black Box Theater at the University of Florida School of Theater and Dance. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Yeah, baby, I got accepted. Yes. Yes. Yeah, baby. No more picture runs from me. Did you go to UF? What? No, I didn't apply to the university. Look. See, you couldn't come on here when I graduated high school.
We couldn't apply to UF.
No.
You didn't go here. And you had what's the man's name? I can't recall his name. He come here and try to go to school.
Which one?
The law school.
Oh, Virgil Hawkins.
Yeah. That was the first student in segregation of the University of Florida.
Yeah.
And I didn't never think I'd be able to take a class at the University of Florida, and finally I did. For a long time, we couldn't go.
No.
And even for a long time, a few people took a few classes, and that was it for several years. You could go out and take a few classes, but you couldn't live on campus.
Lord.
You could live in those university housing for a long time.
Why do you think you could never go to the university?
Well, because it was all white. And I happened to go to the University of Florida. It was when Santa Fe first opened and I wanted to be a nurse. But I got married and didn't go to nursing school because if you wanted to go to school here, you had to try to go to Florida Memorial or you go to Florida A&M or to the Jacksonville.
That's right.
So there was no college for black people to go to.
No.
I was born here in Gainesville. I'm Joel Buchanan. I'm the third of 4 children. I attended Lincoln High School, then I left Lincoln High School when the NAACP, locally under the leadership of Reverend Thomas A. Wright, who was president of the main branch of the NAACP, with Charles Chestnut III, who was president of the youth branch, and I was a member of the youth branch. And in 1964, the NAACP wanted to integrate the public school system, and they needed some children to test to see if we were able to go to school. And out of the children he asked, I was one that said I would ask my parents She used my name for the suit that was filed against the school board, and after taking a series of tests, I think there were 8 of us. 3 students were selected, 2 girls and 1 boy. I was the boy, and we integrated Gainesville High School in 1964. I graduated Gainesville High School on time and got a scholarship to the new community college, Santa Fe Community College. I went there for 1 year and came to the University of Florida and got a degree in English and math. Taught in the public school system for, I forget how many years. Came back and got an advanced degree in education. Went back and had more than 20 years in the public school system and community college. And now, here I am at the University of Florida.
It was a shocking experience, and no one could tell us what it was like because it had not been done in this city or county or state prior. We were the first 3, and I pretty much knew it was going to be different because I was going from an all-black school to a prominently white one, and I was going to be the one to integrate. I didn't realize there was such a resistance among the white community for an African American to come there until it happened. I saw a level of hate that I've never seen before because my mother worked for a prominent white family, the Murphys, and there would be times where we would go to the home for activities. And I was here on campus where there was exposure for being a student at Gainesville High School, and there were 3 of us. The girl ahead of me was LaVon Wright, and she was in the 12th grade, and I was in the 11th grade, and Sandra Williams was in the 10th grade. We, the 3 students, along with the assistant principal of Lincoln High School, where I attended previously, met with the chief of police downtown before we went to school to discuss the safety of the 3 of us. They discussed that we could be assassinated. They talked about it as if it was a possibility. We went to school in an unmarked police car, went to our designated classes, and left after school. We were not encouraged to participate in any activities or go to any activities after school because they were concerned with the safety of the 3 of us. The 3 of us surprised the community because it was perceived that we weren't prepared, but we were prepared. LaVon graduated on time, and I think she was in the top 5% of her class. I graduated on time, and I was in the top 10% of my class, and Sandra did as well. So we all graduated on time, and it was a challenging experience, but I'm glad we had the experience. I don't know if it was hard. I just remember there was certain places you couldn't go, and I came up in a family, you couldn't go anywhere unless you went with someone else. And I remember we had to do major shopping. We did that in Jacksonville. And I remember there were certain stores that you couldn't go in. And a pleasant memory I have is of a restaurant on the corner of 13th called Captain Louis Seafood. And I remember we would go to the back door of the restaurant and stand outside to order the meal. And the cook would come and he would take your order and he would wait until he had time to cook it and bring it to you. And I told myself that eventually I would be able to go on that restaurant because the only difference between those that were inside and outside was skin color. And I knew I'd behave. I had good table manners, so I was determined to go in there. And I finally had a chance to visit Captain Louis when they allowed students to go in. The place that I was arrested from was across the street from Captain Louis, a restaurant on the corner of 13th where Krispy Kreme sits today, called Humpty Dumpty Restaurant. 6 of us went in for lunch. It was a drive-in, and a group of blacks drove in onto the parking lot, and the manager, or whoever, went outside. And when they went outside to deal with the people in the car, the 6 of us walked in the restaurant, and we took a seat, and they locked the door. We were told they weren't going to serve us. Then they took us to jail. And when we went to court, all I remember telling the judge is that all we did was sit down and ask for lunch. We were prepared to pay. We were not served. We were put on probation. So my parents and my family accepted what was happening and that I was the only one in my family willing to make a difference. And I'm glad I made a difference. And the thing is, when I was demonstrating for years at Gainesville High School and when I came to the University of Florida, they supported those things I was in and they made sure I had the necessary tools I needed in order to be successful. And they supported what I was doing. When I had to go to court, the person that went with me was my mother. And when I had to be put on probation and go to the courthouse to visit the judge, I think it was weekly or bi-weekly, she supported it. But It was the first and the last time. My mother was very much into what I was doing. She supported what I was doing. My father did not want me to do it because he feared for my life, but once I made the decision I was going to do it, and my mother supported me, pretty much gave me the support as well.
Was being integrated into the high school and not being able to shop in some stores, is that your first memory of segregation?
Yes and no. I do remember that everybody in my neighborhood where I lived was black, and I do remember there was a certain part of town you couldn't go in. And I remember when things were beginning to change and we started picketing, I was the only one in my family willing to participate. I had done a science project, and I had to be in the 8th or 9th grade. And I'd gotten little white mice. And I did a project on the essentials of vitamins to the body. And I showed what vitamins A, E, and C would do to the body and lack thereof. I won the competition. I went to regionals and I won that. I went to states and state was not integrated. My project was entered into the competition and it had won. And the day when students are there to say what they had done and why I wanted to go to my project, but I was told I couldn't go. And I questioned why, and they said it wasn't my project, but it was my project. They said it looked like a project that a white student could have done. And I did not understand that. I had done a quality project, and I could not be seated next to my project. And I won the award, but it was given to me later. I was determined that if nothing else, I was going to see that that was never going to happen to another student again. That was the only time I can remember having to do with skin color and what I could and could not do.
At the end of my second year, just before graduation, the President Jackson, called several of us into his office and said that he had a request from the University of Florida for students that he felt would excel at the University of Florida. He said, "Miss Moore, I'm recommending you for the College of Nursing. You still want to go to nursing school?" And I said yes. So this door opened, and the College of Nursing at the University of Florida invited me to come over for an interview. I had my interview with the College of Nursing Dean Smith and Dinos, who was the assistant dean at the time, and I was accepted. I was the first black nursing student to be extended that invitation. As it turns out, there were 5 of us that entered from Hampton that September. And so it felt like I had a support system. Bertha and I roomed together off of 3rd Avenue with a gentleman named Alex Tom. That's where we were sent. They wouldn't give us housing on campus. Now, that doesn't mean that the others didn't have housing on campus, because when those first students entered the university, 2 of the students did get housing. But anyway, Bertha knew this gentleman. He had an extra room and an area on the back of his home, which was very nice, had just remodeled. And so we went to live with him. I was okay with that because there were 2 of us, and he worked at the hospital. He was an orderly. And at the end of the first trimester, the other 4 were out of here. Well, either some were on probation and some just didn't make it. You see, the numbers started dwindling before we even got started. Here I was. And there was another young lady who came from Gibbs Junior College, Betty Key. And she and I roomed together for a short while during the 2nd trimester, and I think she left in the middle of the trimester. She was in nursing too. So, anyway, yes, this was my first experience with an integrated situation. Now you have to realize that I came in 1965. The first students to enter the university as undergraduates was 1962, so there wasn't but a handful of us there. I didn't tell people that I graduated from the University of Florida because I think you need to understand. First of all, a lot of black people might not have even known about the University of Florida. They thought it was a far-fetched idea. It was one of those things that the memories of the University of Florida. My experience here was very traumatic at times. And you see, when I went to the university, when I spent time on Florida A&M's campus, I felt so much pride just being able to visit my sisters in college, or when my high school drama club was presenting a play. It just felt like home. It just felt like a place where I belong. When I was at the University of Florida, I did not have a feeling of belonging. And so that's why you don't just dredge up stuff and talk about stuff you don't feel good about. And I have been asked to leave the University of Florida College of Nursing. First of all, she had the experience of fainting in one of her classes. And when she fainted, she was sent to the infirmary. Now, the infirmary then sent her down the hill to a neurologist to check it out and see if she had seizures. And they ended up with a diagnosis saying that she had little seizures or petite mal seizures. So they put her on Dexedrine, and this was her second year here, her third trimester, and she was taking med-surg. So they put her on Dexedrine in the morning, which is an upper, and phenobarbital, which is a sedative for the brain at night. So she was a mess. She couldn't stay awake, and she was all jittery, and this was very trying for her. And there was no one who would advocate for her, no one who she could counsel with or talk to, because she didn't have an advisor. Now, the white students may have had an advisor, but she didn't have an advisor.
So one day one of the graduate nursing advisors had an opportunity to fill in for one of the undergraduate instructors, and so she saw her state. She was able to take one look at her and see that something was not right. And so she asked her to stay afterwards, and she did. And so the med-surg instructor asked her what was going on, because she was a tough around in the College of Nursing. She knew that. She had no doubt about it. She told her, "Don't take any more of that medication. What the hell are they trying to give to you?" She said, "I will take care of this." Those were exactly her words. She said, "I will take care of this."
Now, shortly after that, she was called in by the dean, Dean Smith, and she invited her, or she gave her an opportunity to withdraw, and invited her to go over to FAMU. Well, what you have to understand is that at the time, FAMU was not accredited. They had lost their nursing accreditation. She couched it this way: "I feel like you would do better in an environment where they're more like you."
Not one time did they offer her any tutoring. Not one time did they say,
"Evelyn, we're going to assign you to Miss Doe, and Miss Doe is going to be there for you. If you have any questions or concerns, you can go and ask her."
not one time. But they did invite her to go somewhere else to finish her education.
Now, I didn't invite myself to the University of Florida. I was extended an invitation. Now, the same people who extended me an invitation also extended me an invitation to leave. I talked to my mother about it when I was home on break, and she said,
Marie, did you fail?
I said, "No, ma'am." And my dad said,
Well, you know, she keeps crying and she did get sick.
She didn't fail. What did you go there for?
"I went to get a nursing education."
Well, what's back here for you?
"Nothing, Mama."
Well, you can't come home because there's nothing here for you. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to pray for you. Your daddy and I are going to plant all this acres here in corn, and we're going to get some additional money. We're going to just ask God to just bless you. And you keep going to church. And you keep praying, and you keep doing your best. That's all we can offer to you. But you can't come home. Didn't you go down there to get an education?
Another experience I had, and this is just something that stuck out in my mind. It wasn't something that I wanted to share. Yes, when I applied for a job, I put the University of Florida College of Nursing, and that was my degree. But I would just sit quietly. Most didn't even know I had a degree. It wasn't something that I wanted to announce. We had no graduation ceremony, and we didn't even have a pinning ceremony this summer when I graduated. And I've been back to talk to two of the instructors that were there at the time. One a graduate instructor and one a skills instructor. But I didn't have her for my skills, I had somebody else. And in celebrating the 50th anniversary of the College of Nursing, she could not find anything about that year. Couldn't find pictures. And I said to myself, you know what? This might have something to do with me. It just might have something to do with me. I'm not so naive to think that it didn't have something to do with me. Why could she find everything else about that year, but she couldn't find anything about me? And when I graduated and I took the nursing boards, you know what section of the nursing boards I failed? Med-surg. So that tells you I wasn't dumb, I wasn't stupid. But a period of time out of my life was blocked out by phenobarbital and Dexedrine. I worked psych the first year I got out of school. I had a really good experience in psych because of my instructor, and also, I think it's my passion. I have a passion for people who are challenged in that way. And so she told me,
Evelyn, you are not stupid. You are not dumb. How many others could have made it feel like you have done and still be holding up your head? So I'm going to help you. I'm going to counsel with you, and you are going to study. I'm just going to encourage you, and when you go to take that section of the boards again, you are going to pass.
sure enough, I did. I only failed by 2 points the first time. So that tells you that had I not had that experience there, I would have passed all of my boards. But let me tell you what happened after I didn't pass my boards. I was called in again. I'm already out of school by now, by the dean and the assistant dean to lambaste me and to tell me what an embarrassment I was to the College of Nursing. I was working at Shands. Remember, I'm working the psych unit at Shands. I said, well, lo and behold, are y'all not satisfied that you didn't get me out? And now you want to say that I'm an embarrassment again? They did not offer any assistance to me taking the boards the first time. No, that was not their aim. That was not their aim. That was just some of the experiences that I had.
Before total integration came about in schools, communities raised their own children, and in a lot of cases, we raised our own food, and there wasn't a need for actually going to some of the white establishments for things. You only went if there were necessities and things you really, really needed, like groceries, stuff like that. As far as clothing and stuff like that, my grandmother made all our clothes, so as far as clothing stores and stuff like that, we never had to go to the stores for our clothes. She made trousers, shirts, coats.
So did you ever feel like you were missing out on anything?
No, not really. That's why before integration came about, it did not bother. Well, some things did bother. Books. Not being able to have new books, knowing that books had to be new at one time. The hand-me books that had messages to them in the books that was directed to us. One thing I will never forget, we used to go to the University of Florida to sell Cokes and Pepsi Colas, and this particular game, the Gators lost to Miami 3-0. Students were upset. I was caught with a tray of sodas, so I went outside the gate to sell my sodas and get my little profit to $2.40 back. I reached for a soda. Some students surrounded me and started kicking and spitting on me and calling me all sorts of names. That's why I'm not a Gator today. I ran out of fear. I ran from all the way in front of the entrance of the stadium to Fifth Avenue. As a matter of fact, I was a senior that year. I was working in order to be able to afford my class ring, my graduation invitations, my cap and gown, stuff like that. That was an experience.
My grandfather, if it was raining, he would get us out in the wagon for us to have a coat to go over us, where we wouldn't get sick. Yes, and we had to walk. We would walk straight down the railroad until one girl, and I can't remember her name, was killed down there. Somebody killed her.
What happened?
Had stopped at a store to get her sisters some washing powder to wash with, because they lived out in the country, near our church, and would go out there in their Christmas time to practice.
I can't wait for y'all today. Because I need to go take care of my sister. I need some washing powder. Something's going on.
But nobody figured nothing would happen. So we thought she'd gone on because I wasn't going. Because Mama said I had something else to do.
You'll just have to miss.
But another lady, she was behind her. Now she said she's seen Pearlie. Her name was Pearline. You know the railroad? It's got a curve in it. And after she turned the curve, she didn't see her. Oh, and after she turned the curve and got around the curve, she looked down the road and said she didn't see her.
Well, Miss Polly, why didn't you tell somebody?
I thought that she went up. There was a guy that lived up there in the Gulf Lane. I thought that she was up there maybe talking to Fred or something.
That doesn't make sense. And you missing the girl ahead of you and then telling her sister and them?
We always walk on. But every one of us would walk on one side of the railroad. We never walked on that other side when we went to London. But had they walked on the other side, they would have found this girl's books, laying where she laid them, and they going down the hill slantways. But they didn't find that until the next day. The man that take care of the pool, the waterworks, he said he heard a gun shoot twice, about 2 o'clock in the morning. So police finally, when someone of them walked on the other side, they found the books. And they went seeing where the tracks went down and said it was 2 men beside her, seeing her track and the 2 men track. And they found where they smoked the pipes and rolled the cigarettes and shot her. Done what they wanted to do to her and shot her.
Because she was by herself.
I remember back in the day when I was a little boy, I made friends with the black man who ran the steamroller for the city of Gainesville. Now, a steamroller was this enormous smoke duster thing with a huge flat wheel on the front end of it and 2 big ones in the back. And this guy could manipulate that thing. You see, the 2 wheels in the back, they were in direct line with the one in the front, so it all rolled over the same space. And you could roll and flatten the gray slab with that thing. Now, this man could operate so carefully, so precisely, that you could put a dime down the street, and he would drive right along by it and not displace it with this huge, powerful thing. And that was the steamroller man, John. John was his name. I hesitate to put on record what everyone else called him, but why not? It's what everyone else called him.
He was called Nigger John.
Now, he somehow managed to live with that when he was in the presence of other whites, I suppose. He could live with it. Now, how he was in his free time, I don't know, because I didn't know him that way. Well, I just knew him as his friend who he'd come by after he parked that thing in the city lot, and he happened to walk back on Arredondo Street because, Arredondo was the main highway, back and forth footpath way, car, bicycle, you name it, at that time of the town. Now, the Arredondo Street, or 5th Street pathway, was between the Seminary neighborhood, which was north of town, and the other one, which was south of town, which was called Porter's Quarters. Now, Porter's Quarters was a wonderful black neighborhood full of people that I didn't know. Well, I know people from the Seminary neighborhood because I was on this side of University. University Avenue acted as kind of a dividing line between the north and south here. Kind of a microcosm of the whole north-south issue, if you ask me, or any of my playmates at the time. Here's the reason I wanted to bring up John. Because it was absolutely important in my life. Now, one day, I heard an ambulance siren wailing away. When I could tell it was coming from the Oscar Thomas Funeral Home up on Main Street, but it wasn't going up Main Street like it usually did. It was getting closer. So it was coming west, right along Church Street, and then it stopped. Right at the corner of Arredondo Street and Church Street, just stopped in the middle of the road. And so I ran out to get a better look, and when I got there was John, lying in the middle of the sidewalk in a pool of his own blood. He'd been sitting on this big curved fenceway, this big stone fenceway right at the corner of the Whitstock house. He'd been sitting there, and some drunk had failed to make the corner. So, John was lying here in his pool of blood. At the moment, I'm trying to recollect whether it was his left or his right. I think it was his left foot that had been severed and was just kind of swaying there by his Achilles cord. Now, I saw this when they picked him up and put him on the stretcher, but that happened sometime later because, and this was the pivotal thing, the Oscar Thomas ambulance refused to pick him up and put him on the ambulance because he was black and had to wait.
Yeah, we can't take him. You only have to wait for the White and Jones ambulance to get here.
And that's what I heard. And there's my friend lying there. Something flooded through me that had never flooded through me before. Because when I saw that, and I saw it was just pure idol. I mean, it was awful. And all I could do was sit there, witness it. John, in his agony. I don't know if he could feel anything. Just kind of laid there. with his hands clasped, praying. They didn't try to pick him up. They didn't try to make him comfortable. They didn't do anything. And that was so horrible that I wanted to beat on these people. That was not my nature. I was not brought up to raise my fists and pound. So mentally, I was pounded on him somehow. And then finally, the White and Jones ambulance showed up. And he was very tenderly picked up. But when they picked him up, his foot, which was still in the shoe, I remember, was just kind of swinging there by his Achilles tendon. That picture is so indelible. And the color of that blood right there in front of that house, I can't pass it without thinking about it. You know the funny thing? That stone he was sitting on, it's still pushed out of the way. Nobody pushed it back. I don't think anybody even noticed it except me. Now, whoever ran into him, they were so drunk. There was no malevolence there. It was just ignorance and stupidity and drunkenness, just wanton nonsense. But the acts of unkindness that day, they were not wanton. They were deliberate. They were of a mindset that I was saved from in that moment, and I never forgot it. Now, what my actions were after that were the actions of a little boy who was scared, confused, and whose memory of the whole thing would be eclipsed by other things, and who would revert to being the same little boy who from time to time pretended that he owned Sammy, and Sammy loved pretending that he was a slave. And then when Sammy wanted to be the master and I was a slave, we'd switch roles. We never whipped each other, but we always carried a stick. The master carried the stick. My entire understanding of what slavery was, that was it. But that was what I emerged from. And that right there, that was the moment where the emergence began. Now, if you can trace that in your own life, to where you have this colossal life change, then you're lucky.
Our next speaker will be Sam Taylor, representing the Black Student Union at the University of Florida. Good afternoon, niggas. N-I-G-G-E-R-S, N-I-G-G-A-S. Pronunciation varies a little bit, but basically you are the new niggers. It's very interesting, I didn't realize one could achieve such a mental orgasm by calling somebody that. Nigger. Well, it's happened again. John Parker got zilched yesterday. I understand it almost happened right here at the glorious Mastigator. As I recall, he was once quoted as saying when he first came here that he would never coach black athletes. And I think that's why he's not coaching now. The American mentality says, of course, that we can run the football, we can't throw it. We can run it. I guess we haven't had enough physics in order to learn how to release the projectile at the correct angle and get it to the receiver. And we're viewed as sensual athletes, as mental idiots, as being somehow or other very loyal creatures. But I love my maid, and she likes us. Yeah, so you thought. I wish you could hear what your maid says about you behind your back. She was telling me, my white woman sure is dumb. I swear she's dumb. Now, it's kind of funny. We have our image of you and your sister, your parents, your representatives.
We don't think you're all that bright. You outnumber us, but we can overcome this deficiency. We merely recruit more niggers. And you've done a good job of it. Let your hair grow, wear funny clothes. You ought to see those rednecks looking at you going down University Avenue. If they could just get their hands on you, they might give some of our brothers a chance to get out of jail. Or maybe the cops are being so busy busting you, they might forget about us. Meanwhile, we get ready. We get ready because we have no choice. That great day is coming when black people are going to liberate black people. Now, in the process, if you don't like being niggas any longer by that time, we might be able to help liberate you. Need a little money for it, A few pats on the back, recognition, but we'll help liberate you. Right now, we find some of you are our worst problem. You're stumbling all over yourselves trying to help us. We just got your parents pushed off our backs. Give us a break, okay? We know what to do if you just listen. We know how to achieve liberation if you just believe us. For instance, when the Black Panthers talked about guns, people rejected it. The thought of black students at Cornell with guns was just too much for the American mentality. Yet good and faithful rednecks have had guns on almost every college campus for as long as there have been guns on college campuses. This is nothing new. We merely want to protect ourselves. The police don't do it. Your representatives, your president certainly don't do it. So I guess the task falls on us. We will do it. Some people ask, but what can we do? We are opting for change, drastic change. A change in the way America is run, a change in the way black people are treated. I don't just mean the violent, dramatic stuff that you read about occasionally. I think instead that what we need to get rid of is the subtle kind of intimidation that blacks, poor whites, and you good old niggas are subjected to. I mean, stuff like a friend of mine who's in the county jail right now, who came from work one night and was picked up by the police. I hear he was suspected of being a Black Panther. That was 6 months ago. He came up for trial about 3 weeks ago, a mistrial, and he's still in jail. He doesn't really know what it was he's supposed to have done, but he's in jail. Or like a poor kid who's had to share his food with roaches and rats all his life, who gets tired of seeing you driving your 442s and decides to lift your stereo tape deck, in order to relieve you of the burden of wondering if it will be stolen. I find it very difficult to condemn someone in this position. I find it very difficult to condemn someone who's gone hungry most of his life, even in the presence of food stamps, who's lived in a house where you can look up and see the stars, where the only thing of value may be the television, his parents are worked to death, where there's misery and poverty. When he strikes back, when he lashes out against what's holding him down, I find it very difficult to condemn, in spite of the fact that he may break your windshield. Of course, I don't like to see anybody hurt, but anybody includes black people who are hurt all the time, and this is why we are opting for change. I don't like the kind of employment situation that we have on this campus, where non-academic personnel, black in particular, are automatically challenged because of educational deficiencies which they have nothing to do with, to the lowest jobs on campus. I have an uncle who died in April. He worked on this campus for 13 years. He started out as a janitor 1. He died as a janitor 1. Oh, I know how it feels to be in that position. I've been employed by one of your friend's parents. My wife has been employed by one of your friend's parents, and as a result of those experiences, we know what it is to be degraded and dehumanized, underpaid, overworked, insulted. We can no longer accept this. We cannot, as black people, put up with this anymore. At the same time, you, the glorious students of the University of Florida, are very much going about your daily business. Nothing very much has changed. You're almost all white, almost all fairly well off economically, almost all without very much concern for your fellow man. Almost all of you males are capable of going to Vietnam and killing a Viet Cong. Black people say, we won't go. Hell no! As a brother once said, no Vietnamese ever called me nigger. And he's got the jump on you. We won't kill him. Instead, we won't allow our minds to harbor such a contradiction as killing in another country while we ourselves are not free. If there is killing, unfortunately, it will have to be in America. But we don't like the idea of killing. We like the idea of life, liberty, brotherhood. But first of all, we must achieve liberty. Freedom. In this country, freedom for blacks means freedom from whites. Freedom from you, from your parents, from those of you who want to save us, from those of you who don't give a damn, and from those of you who are just outright hostile to us. We are going to determine our own destiny. We will do it by any means necessary. Any means necessary. Black people must get educated. I talked with your glorious registrar yesterday. Oh, he's not very much willing to allow black students in. Regardless of his reasons given, his actions, if followed, will keep this university almost all white. If you want something to do, that's something. Now that's something you could do fairly easily with fairly clean hands. You won't have the thought of blood on your hands. If we can get more black students into this university, distribute the knowledge, skill, and training of this society more equitably, there's room for black people here so we can go back into our communities well-trained. Yeah. America needs you to stand up, to refuse to be its niggers. Yeah. We stop being them. Where's you?
What years did you attend the university?
I came in the fall of '69 and I graduated summer of '74. And needless to say, race relations weren't exactly inviting for black students. You know, my late grandfather, he grew up in Alachua. And he really didn't want me to come here because of the racism he experienced. You know, there used to be a sign at the old depot in Gainesville that read, "Nigger, if you can read, run. If you can't read, well, run anyways." You know, Alachua was some real racist. And then when I was moving in, I had my roommate come in and, you know, being the friendly guy I am, I got off and I was like, "Hi, my name's Joe." And I held out my hand to shake his hand. And he looked at me, turned around, and I never saw that guy again. I think that year, up until the point in time he came, it was the largest class of black students at the university. You know, very quickly, we formed strong bonds. The Black Student Union was already in existence then, but it was very low key. So me and several other guys, we got together and we did the Constitution of the BSU. We more or less modeled it after the Black Panthers. So, you know, we had a chairman, a minister of information, minister of defense, that sort of thing. And that was the same year that an incident happened that I will never forget. You know, the only year that I lived on campus was my first year. So, you know, I was in South Hall. I had the biggest room on the yard down on the ground floor. And, you know, there was only one black student per floor. And naturally, I made friends with the janitorial staff. So anyways, some guys over in North Hall, they decided to go in the bathroom and throw feces at each other. So this one black janitor that I made friends with, he was a pastor. He came up to me and he said, "Well, they expect us to clean it up." I said, "You know what, Red, you don't have to worry about that. I'll take care of it." So I got on the phone and in about 20 minutes, I had 15 other guys in my room. We walked over to North Hall to check out the bathroom situation, and it was atrocious. No, that was the same year that Willie Jackson and Leonard George came in. They were the first two black football players at UF. So, you know, we put Jacob at one end of the hallway, and then we put Earl Wilcox at the other end. Earl was also a big guy. So we ran down, we knocked on all the doors, and we said, "Hey, y'all made this mess, and you're gonna clean it up."
Were they black students?
They were all white students.
Why do you think they did that?
I have no idea.
Were they reprimanded for doing that?
What happened is, after we made the ultimatum, they called the area director, and then UPD shows up. They called me down to talk to them, and I said, "Hey, those guys had a shit fight, and they need to clean it up." They looked at us like we were crazy. So, after that, we had a standoff for several hours. I said, "We aren't going anywhere until this gets cleaned up." So the guys that had the shit fight eventually cleaned it up. So after that, about 8 of us would go around to the different dormitories on the weekends. And if the hallways and the bathrooms were really messy, we would knock on the doors and make whoever was there say, hey, y'all clean this up. And if it's not cleaned up by the time we get back in 2 hours, well, we're gonna see why it won't be cleaned up. It wasn't about the restrooms per se. It was that me and some of the other guys, we felt that they weren't paying the maids and the janitors enough money to be doing that extra work. So the black people that worked on campus were really glad to see us there. Now I had several people come up to me saying, I don't know what you're doing, but we used to wouldn't get through till 3, 4 a.m. Now we get through at about 11 or midnight. And then there was this one lady in the cafeteria. She was a cashier, and I had a meal card, so I would pick out this and that. She said, you know, bro, you don't gotta do that. Just get whatever you want. So whatever I got, it always came out to 99 cents. So I guess that was their way of protesting.
What is it that's been lost?
Identity. The value of history. There's so many things like personal respect for each other, family, community. Oh, we just lost so much. Look, I realize that, look, time doesn't stand still. You don't want to be here tomorrow. You got to progress in order to move forward, but we just lost the very core and fiber of those things that made us strong. And I think we lost a lot of that when we began to integrate the schools. For instance, what happened when we integrated the schools here in Alachua County? They closed Lincoln immediately. My younger brother Sherwin and hundreds of others were transported over to Gainesville High School to finish out the school year. Couldn't even wait for the school year to finish even. So what did that do to this community? Lincoln was the very hub of the black community. Everything happened virtually at Lincoln. School was accessible. The pride was here. This is where things happened. So that sense of community was lost. And you got to understand, Gainesville was not nearly as large as it is now. So when you start to talk about the things that occurred after integration, we begin to lose our identity. And while we are a melting pot and diversity is extremely important to me, we lost the very identity that brought us to this point. And see, what worries me about our history is that if it's not valued, we can very easily lose the ground that we've gained.
Have you grown up in Florida in the 50s and the 60s? So I was telling a fellow before the elections, it will never happen. It just won't happen. So when it did happen, I was fully emotional about it. And that's when I said to my children, we're going to Washington.
Well, all those people are going to be there.
I didn't care how much people were going to be there. Your daddy's going to be there, and I want you there because you don't know how far black folks come in this country. So the next night when we got home, my daughter called me on the phone. She lives in Orlando.
Why were you so emotional?
I don't expect you to understand.
What was all the hoopla about?
You were there. You saw it. You saw history in the making in this country. There'll never be another first.
Well, you know, he was the most qualified.
Everybody knew that, but not everybody voted for him. I mean, most people knew he was the more qualified. Can you just imagine Sarah Palin as vice president of these United States and McCain gets ill? I mean, I'd probably have to leave the country. But anyways, back to you, Edmund. You have history. As I walk and drive around campus now, I'm just elated at the progress that's been made. When I first graduated, the only thing I wanted to do was get away from a bad experience. But as I matured and got older and realized the value of the education I got, there's no question in my mind that my degrees from the University of Florida have aided me throughout my career. And that's the first question they asked me.
Oh, where did you go to school?
University of Florida Law School.
Oh, well, you're probably all right.
It was that kind of response to it. So I called upon fellow classmates when I was seeking judicial appointments, and they wrote letters and made calls on my behalf. So there's no question in my mind that the friendships I established, at least in law school, have helped me throughout my career. No, I've seen the judicial system change. I see young black lawyers now coming out and going to work for big law firms. When I graduated, there was no white firm hiring black lawyers. I mean, you could go to work for legal services or a public defender's office or legal aid or something. But now, these youngsters coming out, oh, the sky's the limit. And if they've got the grades and the determination, well, the sky is the limit.
Ask Mrs. Mickle and Mr. White to come up for the panel, and Mr. Hicks is here. I don't think he's been able to be here, but as they're situating themselves, in 2012, Kevin Marshall, professor of College of Arts, called SPOP and said he was thinking of doing a play on the experiences of African American students. Did we have any powerful stories, oral histories of African American students at the University of Florida? I said, yes, we do. We have many. It's just a matter of how many you want to use. And so he took the stories. We were able to work with the performers. They did kind of screen tests and read-throughs, a very powerful experience. And so, again, if you just joined us, I wanted to introduce to you Mrs. Evelyn Mickle, Mr. Albert White. They're featured, of course, in Gator Tales, and their vignettes are really the two most popular of the vignettes in the play. The whole play is over an hour and a half long. The way in which the play has been used in classrooms, though, in high schools and colleges, universities, is you'll hear that, oh, the two narratives that are really the most popular are really Mrs. Mickle's and Mr. White's. And again, they've been incredible contributors and guides in building the Joelle Buchanan Archive. So I just want to thank them, and we would like to hear their thoughts on watching their performance.
Good afternoon. First, I want to say that I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank Dr. Ortiz and Dr. Weston and Dr. Marini for thinking of me and inviting us to participate on this panel and to make some comments. Now, for the last 2 days, I have listened to my oral history, I've read it, and I've looked at the play. And I decided that, you know, they're going to see the play. And so I'll leave that for you to make your questions or to ask your questions. But as I read the letter or the article, as I read the article that was sent to us that Dr. Falk, our president, our current UF president, wrote, I was really touched. And I want to quote from what he said. And he said, I and many others experienced the Buchanan oral histories in 2015 through the play Gator Tales, which told the story of integration of UF and local schools. And then he went on to say that it was written by Professor Kevin Marshall. The play is UF's history brought into stirring, S-T-I-R-R-I-N-G, stirring life. Well, I want to tell you, it really did stir me. Its viewing really shocked me. In viewing it, it really shocked me. I was the one who experienced what you saw on film, but I did not make it a habit of reminiscing over these inequities. It was very painful. And this is what Dr. Falk also said. He chose two of the persons that was in the drama, and he stated, Evelyn Moore Mickle, the first black graduate of our College of Nursing, tells how she was the first invited to attend, then neither welcomed nor offered help, then quickly invited to leave. She stuck it out after a heart-to-heart talk with her mother. Did you all see the heart-to-heart talk? That's right. Thank you, President Falk. Now, I never had another president of our university to say really anything to me about me. So that really touched my heart. For me, oral histories, he says, help me to fully grasp how we arrived at the realities and challenges of the present and gain insight into the high personal cost of achieving positive change and the sacrifice required of individuals who blaze trails. What you saw in this drama is just a tip of the iceberg. My oral history is about almost 50 pages, and that was not the totality of my experiences, as Dr. Weston would tell you. And so, in my oral history interview with Dr. Marna Weston and student Jason Hudson in 2009, now remember I graduated in 1967. After the election of President Barack Obama, I shared that much is required of you when much is invested in you. And so in my history, I share how in my community growing up, that my parents invested a great deal in me, my siblings, and I'm number 11 of 15, so I had my own, school. And then our teachers in our community. My father was a pastor, and so I didn't have to feel badly about myself, even though I knew my place. Blacks knew their place, or colors at that time knew their place. And so I said that during the time of President Barack Obama's election, a transformation took place. A transformation took place. Yes, so many people wanted change, and truly he put together a team of workers like the Underground Railroad. That's a part of our history. And surprised the nation and the world. It was U.S. President Lombardi, Dr. Young, and Dr. Manchin that really helped the University of Florida turn the corner of transformation, and now Dr. Falk and Provost Glover and so many others, and the oral history archives under Dr. Ortiz's governance. The nursing school began a transformation period for me with Dr. Anna McDaniel because she came here as the dean in the latter part of 2012 or the first part of 2013. She reached out to me immediately with openness, with sorrow and regret for the past injustices of how those before her had mistreated me and others, but certainly me. It was Dr. Joe Snyder and Dr. Joe Irvin that kept the need to be inclusive and embracing me and all students alike. Thank you, fellow nurses. Fast forward, Dean Anna McDaniel and the College of Nursing in 2016 in an article, and I just want to show you the front of this, and you can get it on UF nursing. I was honored 3 times in 2016 by the college. The first time, I forgot what happened. Oh, I was pinned. I probably need to share that because that was not in there. In 1967 of August, we were on the trimester system, and we did not have a graduation ceremony that summer. But we could have had a pinning ceremony, which really is what gives nurses their send-off, their authenticity, if you will. No pinning ceremony. I had to come to the conclusion that after they could not find pictures or anything else, that it was probably about me. And so in January 2016, the Institute of Black Culture said that they were going to see to it that I had a pinning. And Dean McDaniel was there to pin me and sponsored the function that supported the pinning. In September, 60 years of nursing at the University of Florida celebrated and gave 60 awards, 20 Inspired Awards, and I received the Inspired Award. But the culminating part of that was in December in Gator Nurse, I was featured on the cover, and an article was written by me with the help of the editor Tracy Wright for the College of Nursing. I came from a community and an educational environment where the lives of our people mattered, and then coming to the University of Florida, this flagship university, the very adults who were to teach me and all the students that were here, they were to teach us how to care for those that were in crises and in need of additional health care. I did not find that. How to treat me as a student, they did not show that. Provide for my basic needs. As someone you've neglected to treat as an equal in terms of the basics of life, kindness, respect, encouragement. I got so little of that. In nursing and medicine, there is a motto, if you will, first do no harm. And in nursing, the art of skilled care, doing for others what they cannot do for themselves, evaluate, treat, and teach, and release them to their nurturing environment and continue to heal and to function optimally. This was why I came to the University of Florida for the College of Nursing. Yet most of my sojourn at the University of Florida was a period of strife, stress, injustice, with respites of encouragement from most of my validation and my encouragement came from outside of the College of Nursing. I had a church family, Mount Carmel. And I had a dear friend, and he's here today. We met in '65 when we came to the University of Florida. He was the first African American to enter the College of Medicine, Dr. Reuben E. Brigady. And with him today is his wife, and I want to acknowledge him. So Joel was part of that community. Joel and I shared living in the same neighborhood right across the street from each other. He was at Gainesville High School, and I was here at the university. So I met Joel and his family. Also, as Joel went about collecting histories, Joel and I became walking partners toward the end of his life here on earth. And we walked in the mornings, and I would tell Joel, you know you need to get on out and come on over here, and let's get this walk in. It's going to be good for what, what's going on with you. So anyway, but we remained friends and comrades over the years. Now about the Play Gator Tales, devised and directed by Kevin Marshall, a very unique work of art and creativity. Don't you agree? Expertly done. I'm amazed at the young lady that was casted to play Evelyn Marie Moore. We have similar features and mannerisms. I'm more than pleased. Great job, Chrissy August. A tremendous price, sacrifice, investment, not just for me, but all who believe that equality and justice was to be ours and for generations to come. Today, I'm accompanied by my husband, the Honorable Stephen P. Mickle, the first to earn an undergraduate degree, and the second to earn a law degree. And I want to plug this here. He has a master's degree also in education. But out at the law school, they have planted a tree in his honor. They planted one for George Stark and one for George Allen. So there's 3 magnolias right there in the front of the entrance. Also, at the time that I was here in nursing school, my youngest sister, Veronica Moore Campbell, who's here with me today, was integrating the middle school in Suwannee County, Live Oak. Now, you know that was some doing, because Live Oak is really known for its injustices, and I'll leave it like that. Black lives matter. Lives matter. That's why I went into nursing, because people's lives matter. It matters not whether you're black, brown, Caucasian, white, whatever you call yourself, whatever your skin color. All lives matter. Really, that was my struggle in nursing school, that I was treated as if my life did not matter, even after being extended an invitation. I tell you, they needed students of color because they needed the money. But they soon forgot that they needed the money. And they really needed the students to attend to the needs of all patients. I'm going to tell this little story. I was a work-study student, and I was taking a full load, and the charge nurse on pediatrics was where I was assigned, wanted me to continue to work 2 to 3 8-hour shifts. And when I told her that I was getting ready to leave, she told me that she would see to it that I would not finish college because I refused to continue to put myself in jeopardy. I knew I could not perform in my classes and work 2 and 3 8-hour shifts a week. First of all, you have to understand that I was living, for those of you who know the campus, I was living about 6 more blocks beyond where we are right now. And I walked every day all the way down to Shands Hospital. And so if I didn't get a ride from someone who was a staff person, I walked. Rain, shine, sometimes cold, sometimes hot, whatever it was. But I had to walk. I did not have a car. And so it was not something that I could continue to do if I was going to obey my mother. My mother said I couldn't come home. I went there for a nursing degree. You need to get that nursing degree because back in Live Oak, there is nothing for you. And she was right. I knew she was right. The only nurse that I'd ever met, registered nurse that is, I met her when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. Her name was Elzada Abrams. And she trained at Brewster Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida. But I want you to know that working at that hospital in Live Oak, she didn't stay very long. They saw to it that she either would have to leave or she probably would have been killed. And so the experience that brought me to the University of Florida was my brother's illness at that same hospital. I was 15 by this time. My father was a school bus driver, and so my mother would have to pick him up from the bus route and bring him back because we were also farmers. And so when the doctor said that he would not release him after a full week of not knowing what his diagnosis was, and he was swelling over and over and over again, and he was actually dying, it was my sister and her husband who said, you either release him and send him to Shands in Gainesville, or we are going to pick him up and take him. Now, I was there with him as his caregiver while my parents finished doing what they needed to do. By this time, I was 15, I was in 10th grade. But I had an opportunity to come to Gainesville, to the hospital, to see the care that he received. That solidified my reason for going into nursing. And so I was convinced and I was convicted, and I indeed knew that I was going to end up in nursing because I felt that if I could make a difference in one African American's life, I would have done what was pleasing to my Lord.
What an interesting story. Very interesting, Evelyn. Good afternoon, everybody. Of course, by now, I think you've heard my name. I'm Albert White. I have sat and conducted myself as best I could. Dr. Pinckney really took my part to another place. And I really appreciate how he portrayed me in the play, but I want you all to know that I have a very easy disposition, and he was putting it on pretty strong playing myself in that way. It is a pleasure, though, to do this. And I want to thank you and Tamarna because I can recall, I guess it's been 4 or 5 years ago when we did this. I didn't know it was going to develop into all of this, but this is really cool, if I may. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to be in Gator Tales. That was an experience that I did not experience or that I would ever have. Somebody actually portraying me on film. I'm looking for now to get out to Hollywood and maybe do something else. Who knows? If you guys would shoot Gator Tales out to Hollywood, we'll see what happens. And I will count you guys in for any little money that I do make. I've got stories to tell. At my age, I've had a lot of experiences. My wife and I have had a lot of experiences. And I thought that I would share some of these with you based on some of the stories that I've heard this morning, which were extremely interesting. And I'm going to share, I guess, about 3 experiences with you and just kind of let you know what we have dealt with. My wife is with me, Aura. She goes with me everywhere. And we support each other. And I want you to put yourself in my place, in my wife's place, in some of these experiences that we have had. Were they because of the color of our skin? Probably. in most cases. And I think that's what this is about. We're all one people. We all should love one people, work together as a people. And of course, we do have those situations where some people just don't get it yet and may not be as friendly toward some of us as they should be. I want to talk about an experience that I had when I left the school that I truly loved, and I'm not trying to sell a book, but this is a history of Lincoln High School that Dr. Kevin McCarthy and myself authored about 4 years ago. Got a scholarship to go to North Carolina A&T. That was in 1962. Got on the bus and rode to North Carolina, to Greensboro. Got off the bus, had to call a cab to come pick me up to take me to campus with the footlongs. Back then we had footlong suitcases, as we call them. They were big things that you carried. You didn't carry a bunch of suitcases like we do now. You just had this one big thing. Cab driver came to pick me up. As we were leaving the bus station, I noticed that there were just police cars all over Greensboro, downtown. And I asked him what was going on. He said, well, man, you don't know, it's a sit-in going on. At that time, I didn't know that my alma mater was where the sit-in demonstration started. There at the Woolworth, 5 and 10, on Elm Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. Got on campus and I'm really scared and wondering if I had made a mistake coming to Greensboro, because I'm leaving Little Gainesville, where we walk, downtown, and you never look up and you get off the sidewalk when somebody is coming in. When you go in a store, you can't touch anything. And so I'm figuring that the folks in Greensboro being as obedient as we were here in Gainesville. Got on campus, got into my room, and scared to death, not wanting to even go outside, because I had never heard of a sit-in where people are downtown and they're being attacked. My roommate was from North Carolina. He and I kind of talked a little bit, and we found out once going to our first classes that if you're going to walk, if you're going to march, you would be excused from class. Now, I was in a pretty tough curriculum. Sometimes I didn't study. Now, what do you do when you didn't study and they're marching downtown and you didn't have your work ready? You march downtown. There's another school, an all-girls school there, Bennett College, long before I met my wife. And the girls who went to Bennett College were very pretty, and they walked also. So that's another reason to march, isn't it? So my roommate and I would march when we weren't ready for class, and I'm just really kidding, because most of the times we were. But marching down Market Street in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1962 was nothing to really, really enjoy. You were spat on, you were cursed, you were called names, people would try to hit you, and we weren't getting that much protection from the police. We'd march downtown, make a left on Elm Street, come back up, I can't remember the other street, baby, but we come back up the next block, come back to campus. They began to arrest so many of our students until they had to start pleading for us to leave the warehouse where they were holding us, because the city couldn't afford 3 meals a day for 200 or 300 or 400 people. And that's what was going on. But that was an experience. That was an ugly experience to have. But it eventually got better there. I ended up staying, and of course, I met my wife, and we both were graduates of North Carolina A&T. The second experience that I had was here at the University of Florida, starting on my graduate work. The professors that I have were not very nice to me. One of my professors asked me, why was I there? Why are you here at the university? I can't use profanity now, so I'll have to do as best I can. But I told him I was here to get my education, to get my degree, so that I could move on with my life. Well, he was trying to convince me that I didn't need to be at the University of Florida, if you can believe that. That's what was said to me. A couple of my other professors they just did not want to give myself and a couple of, another black student those the credits that we had deserved on projects that we were working on. So I had a talk with my major professor, and he was a very, very nice man, a very sensitive man. And he said, Albert, we're going to get this straight. So he had a discussion with them, and I noticed that they began to talk to me a little bit more in class and began to work with me on the projects that I had to do. And it worked out. I eventually got my master's degree from the University of Florida. Of course, Stephen had come when it was really rough getting into the university, and not many of us. When I was here at the University of Florida, there were less than 100 black students here. I would be walking across this campus, and I'd see somebody black, and when we met each other, it was like we hadn't seen each other in a year. We'd start shaking hands. So glad to see someone who looked like yourself. That was an experience. That's the second experience. Now the third experience, and I want you to put yourself in my place. I think we've heard Lincoln High mentioned a couple of times. I just held up a Lincoln High School history book that Kevin and I have done. I loved Lincoln. Loved it. One of the best things I thought that could have ever happened to me, going to Lincoln High School. It was a great school. But there was a mandate that was put out to this country that all schools should be integrated. I was a little confused. Integrated, or were they closed? I'm thinking that maybe they got it confused. Maybe the Supreme Court said they should be closed, but they were integrated, supposedly. However, the majority of the black high schools in this country, black high schools closed, including the school that I just love, my school. Now, I'm away in college. My mother is sending me articles from the Gainesville Sun because they were putting them out, every other day. I wasn't here, so I don't know, but I was getting them in the mail. It tore me apart to know that my school was closed. I had two siblings at Lincoln during the time, and they were transported over to GHS, of course. No offense to anybody in this room, but I'm just asking, why was Lincoln closed? Why didn't they close GHS and send them over to Lincoln? No, that would not happen during those times, and I think we understand where the power of the community is. Those students in Lincoln had to go to GHS. Now remember, Joel and Laverne and Sandra had gone through all of this to get into GHS, to integrate it. But now, GHS, we're closing Lincoln to get all of our students over to GHS, so you can see what that means. But that was what was going on there at Lincoln during that time. So what kind of results did that lead to? When Lincoln closed, a community was shut down. A community was shut down, the black community, because Lincoln was so valuable. It meant so much to our community. But now our school is closed, and that hurts. There's just something that sticks you in your side when you think about that. The hub of a community, the hub was lost. The community meetings that we had at Lincoln, the pipeline that we had at Lincoln, that we could communicate in our community, that we could talk together about what was going on downtown. And we know that downtown, we're talking politics, and everything downtown was not in the black community's favor. We needed meetings to have those kinds of things. That was these enclaves in Gainesville, East Gainesville, Spring Hill, Sugar Hill, Fifth Avenue, Porters. All of these communities were impacted by this move to close Lincoln because we relied on Lincoln. There was something that folks used to say was that when Lincoln had a football game, that you could go in any black community and just rob it and just take stuff and don't have to wear a mask or just walk out when you get it, because everybody was at the football games at Citizens Field. That's how much we love what we did in our community, supporting our high school athletics and all those kind of things. Lincoln was closed in the middle of the school year, not at the end of the school in May or June, whenever they closed, but it was closed after Christmas, so the kids didn't come back to Lincoln. They had to go to GHS. So what did that mean for the students? Well, quite a few things, and I jotted down a few of those things. There was no spring sports, so that meant there was no baseball, no track, no tennis, and one of the things that really hurt was there was no senior prom. All of you can remember what senior proms were like, and you look forward to them. There were no senior proms. Not only that, but there was no baccalaureate, no commencement. We didn't have the ring ceremony. We didn't have the senior play. None of those kinds of things that we all enjoyed when we were in high school. They were taken away from us, and that hurts. Our teachers were scattered all over the place if they were fortunate enough to get a job, and I often wondered how many of them actually had a job after Lincoln was closed. But that was one of the things. But last but not least, our kids were sent to a hostile environment where teachers did not want to teach them and the students did not want them there. Now I ask you to put yourself in the place of the students who were moved from Lincoln. It probably is difficult for you to even imagine what that feels like for those of you who did not have that experience. A very, very, very hurtful experience that our students experienced. A school that sat vacant for 4 or 5 years, sitting there, a first-class school, was closed, shut down. And while my wife and I often said that we are a community, I guess we just are all over the place doing things. One of the things that the Alumni Association is working on is getting a wall put in front of Lincoln that will have the names of all of the graduating classes from 1925 to 1970. The classes will be on this wall, somewhat like a memorial wall that you see in some places in Washington. We feel like that's very, very important to our offsprings. Our kids need to know about Lincoln High School. They need to know that a school was here where their parents went and what it meant to this community. It was a very, very, very much needed thing to do, and we're working on something like that because we don't want Lincoln to die. John Dukes once said that Lincoln High School was a school where teachers who wanted to teach could teach, and students who wanted to learn could learn. And that was very important to us as well. So these are some of the things that we have experienced, which were not necessarily fair to one community. And they had no power to do anything about that, but suffer the results. Until we can come together again, think together, talk together, love together, then we hope that that will happen. Now, I don't know how much I was supposed to talk about the university Forgator tales, but I wanted to share some of the things that we need to keep in mind as we go forward with the kinds of conversations that we've had this morning. You've heard them all, and you know exactly what we need to do in some cases. I've been very vocal with a lot of things that I've talked to Dr. Ortiz about, had conversations with Marna, and others. And my wife and I will continue to be very active in this community, doing as best we can to bring about positive change to make all races come together and be able to work together. That's very important. And we just appreciate this opportunity. And I don't know if I spoil the conversation or not, but there's nothing like being truthful. Sometimes it's not easy listening to the truth. They say the truth hurts. But these are just some experiences that I have had, and I wanted to share with you all today. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Mickle, Mr. White. We should also say that on Saturday, Albert White is giving a presentation titled Legacies of Lincoln High School at the Aquin Jones Center at 1013 Northwest 7th Avenue, which is a very iconic place in our community. We have getting a message from our office manager and a person who we need to acknowledge as well, a person who's really the brains of the oral history program, the organizer who keeps things going. Standing in the back is Tamara Jenkins. Please give her a round of applause. And Tamara's reminded us that we need to begin to wrap it up because some of us are going to be heading over to the Harn Museum, and some of us are going to be headed over to Pugh Hall. We have time for just, say, 2 questions, and then we'll wrap up. And sir, you want to identify yourself?
Yes, I'm Nathaniel Cameron. I grew up in this community. I don't have a question, but I have a brief remark. I'd like to tell you about a celebration that's going to occur March 31st. I'm a vice president of the Pleasant Street Historic Society here in Gainesville. It's a 35-year-old organization. I'm just kind of coming back to the community. And we're having our 11th Clarnell Smith Griffin Distinguished Speaker Award on the 31st. And our speaker will be the first attorney, Finnish African-American attorney, George Allen. It's going to be at Mount Carmel Baptist Church, 3 o'clock. And if you are interested, and I hope you come, but Mrs. Melanie Barr, and by the way, if any members of the Pleasant Street Historic Society are here, would they stand, please? And we have a display outside, and if anyone, thank you, if anyone is interested, they can go there. And I have nothing else to say. That's brief.
Thank you, sir. March 31st, I will be there. My wife will be there. One more question.
Thank you, Paul. I just wanted to thank both of you for your strong connection with the program. It's so nice to see you both so involved and willing to share your life stories like this. My question is about Florida's black high schools. There is a persistence to black high schools. Mabane celebrates as a group every Thanksgiving. Consolidated over in Lake Butler, still very much involved. Bartow, Lincoln has individual classes doing things. Why do you think that black high schools, in your opinion, continue to be so persistent since they have closed these many years later, that entire families, that generations continue to gather to sing the class songs, to have the teachers come back and speak? I went to my mother's 50th anniversary in North Carolina, and the same thing was there. So what is it that provides this resonance, in your opinions?
That's very easy to answer, because they love their school and they miss those kinds of activities, and they want to keep the legacy alive. Our legacy is that Lincoln is our mission statement is that we'll perpetuate Lincoln. We're trying to perpetuate Lincoln, and by honoring its teachers, its administrators, its students. That's our mission statement, to perpetuate the legacy of Lincoln High School by honoring those folks and eventually getting that wall built. Yes.
I would say that in the African American community, the roots and the value of the community and its people, its people, not just the students, but the people, run deep. At one time, we didn't even have schools, and we had to raise money for the teacher's salary to have schools. Our people gave their lives for us to have schools. And so I think it's a connection that we feel an obligation to keep it alive. Our our families depended upon the teachers and the administrators to share with them whatever they needed to do if they faced problems. The students the same. And so I would just say that there was family, there was church, and there was school. And all of these were important. With the closing of the predominantly black schools in our communities, it has caused a division. There is a lack of community. There's a sense of belonging because we got our sense of belonging and our encouragement. When I made the statement about those who have had much invested in them, much is required of them, I could just name my teachers, one after the other, that invested in me. They expected me to go on and be somebody. It was my teachers that believed that I could make it at the University of Florida along with my parents. If my teachers didn't believe in me, who was going to believe in me? Because they were the ones that was teaching me 5 days a week. And so I just believe that if we ever figured out, Albert, how we are going to have some of those schools, but you know, we've lost a lot, and I just believe that we've got to figure out how we can not necessarily continue to be segregated, but we need that kind of validation. White students don't have to have that issue because it belongs to them already. That's why there was such resistance to us coming and integrating. They didn't necessarily want to share. And one thing about us in the African American community, we don't mind sharing.
And if you'll note, if you read this book, you'll see where when they spent money to build Lincoln, when this Monday was passed by the Supreme Court, the Alachua County decided to build 2 schools rather than one. One was Lincoln and one was GHS. That's what they did. This is a while back. They decided to build 2 rather than just having 1 school for everybody.
We do have to stop now, unfortunately, and maybe let's give Mr. White and Mrs. Mickle a warm round of applause. Oh, and we have one more. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to make a comment or to say something about the legacy and the continuing of legacies in our schools. My name is Vita Jackson Carter, and I'm a product of the School Board of Alachua County. I'm also a Gator. So this is generation after generation. So the legacy lives on. I'd just like to say, being principal at Mebane, A.L. Mebane Middle School, as they say in Alachua way, there is a classroom that has been dedicated to all of the classes that have graduated from Mebane, all of them. And it took 3 or 4 years for Darrell Robertson, God bless and rest her soul, and that A.L. Mebane Alumni Association worked continuously. There is also videotapes of people that attended Mebane and the Douglas, and it just takes work in the community. Every 6th grade class that comes through that school has the opportunity to learn about the history of that school, the original history of the school. So it takes the community, yes, as Mrs. Mickle has said in Albert, but it also takes administrators that are in schools that believe that the legacy is important and the history of that school is important. So it took us a long time, but it is still there. And over the years, if you're ever in Alachua Way, and they have a homecoming weekend where they have the public come in, but you can go in and sign in and look to see all of the artifacts that have been donated over years and years of time, that the legacy still lives on in that high school, in that school, which is a middle school now. But Lincoln also has a room at Lincoln Middle School. So you have to continue to keep that in the forefront, not just with the school board, but with the principal and people in the building, so they can understand how it's important to educate our young people about the legacy in our schools. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be the last word for today. So we'll see you over at Pugh Hall or at the Harm Museum. There'll be the shuttle out in the usual place. Our students will help guide you out there. And if you can't make tonight, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:30. And Betty? Yes, shuttle back to the parking. Yes, back to the North Lawn.